years ago. We did it this.
That was I see a lot of candidates.
They've changed a lot.
The dart scene might be one of my favorite scenes there.
Hardest thing on your club.
Yeah. Just resources primarily, or
Well, before I got there, we didn't find it.
this is New Britain.
No,
Bristol. Okay, yeah. Because DRA is looking like that DRA design. I get that. That's cool. Beautiful. It's really nice.
There's Green Hills.
I'd like to call to order the regular meeting for September of the Board of Finance, the Town of Somers. Present tonight are Paul Hart, Bruce Devlin, Joe Talisano, Bill Salka, Michael Parker, and in addition we have Brian Wissinger, our Chief Financial Officer, and his sidekick, Mike Marinaccio. First item on the agenda is the Board of Education update.
No power.
The light, if all of a sudden stop working, you tap it and you hear. You hit it one more time.
I think we're good. Good evening. So this is the first opportunity this year where we'll provide a monthly financial report. So I'll turn it over to Stephanie, or if you have any questions to ask, and then following that, we'll update you on the HVAC project.
Sounds good.
So this is the report that we submit on a monthly basis to our Board of Education. They just saw this. They usually see the first meeting of the month following. So this is through August. Obviously, July and August are kind of a fluctuating month for us. A lot of things are being encumbered. A lot of changes are happening. Staffing happens. Turnover happens. So at the time of this report, we were fully staffed on our certified teachers, but we did have 4 non-certified positions that were vacant at that time. 2 paras, a secretary, and a payroll clerk. So that speaks to some of the money that is still in the salary line. We had a custodian that was hired at a higher rate than we originally budgeted for, so that attributes to the negative in that line right now. And a lot of things still get worked out with special ed during the summertime. We're getting contracts in. We don't encumber anything until we actually have contracts for our outplacements. So for tuition, that has all been kind of worked through during the month of September. For transportation, the board did ask that we start going to more group stops to try and save on transportation costs. So that was all being worked out through August. For special ed transportation, that negative is typically offset by our excess cost money that we submit for in December that we get during the springtime. And other than that, we had regular purchasing and encumbering happening during the summer.
I think you answered my question. So that's why you have about $950,000 unencumbered, because it's still very fluid early into the fiscal year.
Yeah, there's a lot of encumbering that waits to happen during the summer. Mostly instructional supplies are ordered during the summer. Salaries get encumbered. But then there's staff turnover. We have a release of salaries, and during the hiring process, we kind of let that sit out there until we hire somebody in. So that all kind of fluctuates really throughout the year, but absolutely during the summer.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Steph.
You're
Anybody else have questions for Stephanie?
welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, shifting gears to the HVAC project, the building committee has been meeting religiously to move this project forward. I'd like to thank the members of the building committee who have put in the effort. see this through and to inform the community of our present status. So on 9/16, the Board of Ed called a special meeting, and at that special meeting, we had representatives from CES, Gilbane, and Colliers. It was the Board of Ed's opportunity to publicly ask any and every question related to estimates, scope of work, materials. That was about a 2-hour meeting last Monday, and it was determined that we would reconvene, bring the construction reps back for last night's Board of Ed meeting to finish that conversation, and the board could consider taking possible action. Where we stand right now, the board last night did approve the new proposed amount to complete this project, all in at $15,269,000 and $644. So that was the most recent information from last night. We have members of the board of building committee there last night, and that's where we presently stand.
Okay.
I asked Chuck Warrington from Colliers to come as a representative of this construction project. He's been working with us along with a rep from Gilbane and CES. So if you have any specific questions about estimates, scope of work, he's here to assist with the answering of those questions.
I guess my concern is that we budgeted a certain amount, and then it ended up being something like $2 million short, and it seemed like an awful lot of money. And this isn't your fault. This is the process. Went into services that weren't actually doing anything to put the HVAC in. So I'm curious how accurate this will be, or how many more surprises, because we don't want to do this and not have the AC. I mean, that just seems like a waste of time and money. And it just seems like the professional services, from what I understand from speaking to Brian, have been ludicrous. And we haven't gotten anywhere, and it's not your fault. It's more an issue of the process. So I want to better understand how we can pin down a number and hopefully actually get work done with the money instead of just services.
Yeah, sure. So Chuck Warrington with Colliers. Nice to meet you all.
I'm sorry, please say your last name clearly.
Warrington, W-A-R-R-I-N-G-T-O-N, Warrington. Certainly understandable, and we just got, I think we got brought on back in April of this year, about a year after the last estimate. So we certainly empathize with the town's position and understand it. Unfortunately, there are a couple other HVAC jobs like similar to this one for different reasons that are over two. I'm not going to delve into it, but they're it kind of goes through the process that you alluded to. The process needs to be improved, I think, but specifically to this specific scope of project with the grants commitment with the state. And I certainly hope that in the future there's more guidance to all the districts throughout Connecticut to help them out with this for it. With respect to having the level of confidence in the recommended budget, when we were brought on board, one of the first questions we asked was, how are you going to deliver this project? You go in general, meaning what type of a contract you're going to use, general contractor or a construction manager. And we talked through that, the pros and cons, and the building committee elected to go with construction manager. And the reason being is that it's a really professional service that's hired, and as part of their pre-construction, prior to construction, during design is one of the valuables is their estimating for that. The difference between, I think, the Construction Cost Solutions, who did the July estimate upon which you voted, and Gilbane Building Company, who did the estimates. Gilbane's done multiple. They're probably in the third or fourth. There hasn't been a lot of projects out. It's only been a couple of years. So they already have a couple of projects under their belt, along with some ones that they didn't do that they got data from. That is, I think, educating their estimate much, much better as far as unit pricing and looking at the scope of the work, so they can make proper adjustments and better adjustments to inform them of how to estimate it versus, I'll say, normal like a renovation job or a new construction job for them. Number one, and they've seen it over a couple projects in the last couple of years, and they've been adjusting those. Number two, as an owner's rep, I can tell you that Gilbane is much more qualified than construction costs. So they do estimating for many projects, a lot of school projects throughout the state. Rhode Island, Massachusetts, they have a large database in their estimating team. Their chief estimator is a mechanical estimator to boot. They're doing estimating down at Yale, so they're in constant contact with the manufacturers, the subcontractors that are in the industry. So I think they're probably just more in tune with this type of work as well. Some of the discrepancies between the first one, Construction Cost Solutions, and Gilbane also is, and if anybody's listened to any of the prior meetings, is really the construction phasing and taking into account how this building was going to be delivered and executed in real time. The original estimate assumed that it was first shift, all in one phase over 8 months. Well, in my professional opinion, any professional estimator that thinks it can be done in 8 months at an occupied school really hasn't been in construction. You kind of question if they've ever been in construction and understand school construction and the logistics associated with that. And on first shift. Even on second shift, that would be tough because you're still on an occupied school that's operating. If we were dumping the building and say if we had a place to move the entire school into, say if we had portables or another building, Gilbane's estimates that it would have been 12 to 14 months, even if they had full reign of the building, just because of lead time of materials and the magnitude of the work. So I just, with respect to the again, going back to the level of confidence, the estimator and the team that you have estimating that is just extremely high. The qualifications are much higher. They're much more experienced. We've vetted it out. We've asked a lot of questions as well. We've been part of that process as well, working with the administration of. They estimated initially, and I think the first number is around 15 million. It was culture shock, and that was based upon second shift, because that's what we initially assumed. The building committee said, well, once you did it on first shift, how much could we save? And they estimated around $1 million in savings just in that premium difference, attractiveness to the project. A lot of trades, they don't want to work second shift, they will. But also going on second shift, there was a lot of cleanup, startup, breakdown, cleanup before the school came back in. So there's a lot of, I don't say money wasted, but a lot of money on mobilizing and demobilizing on a nightly basis that they assumed. Again, and that was the parameters that they estimated on. But working with the administration and asking, can we find some swing space? Can we find 5-6 classrooms, maybe consolidate and reassign some rooms around to give them an area to work in that they can work first shift, it's cordoned off, it's safe, but they're not having, their tools are in there, they don't have to pick their tools up and clean the space up and teach in that space the next day. That's a big difference there. So the second round, that's where we kind of came out with that. But we've also value managed. Again, I think the estimated effort, we typically in a project, and we didn't necessarily suggest it here just because of cost, and we're trying to be cost conscious. We would typically have 2 estimators, and we would at the same time and reconcile them and have a meeting around a meeting room, go through the plans, verify quantities, verify unit prices, assumptions with the designer there. What's the intent here? What are you looking to do here? And we typically will reconcile those so we'll have even a higher level of confidence. We didn't do it here just because of time and money. That probably would have been $25,000 to do that. Given Gilbane's track record and their expertise, we felt that maybe we'd forego it on this one. We just didn't want to keep getting spending fees for the sake of doing that. So that's the reason why we didn't necessarily suggest that we normally would. But we had CS in a room. We're in a room. We're going through it, scrubbing it. They did come up with savings about, I think, around 500, I want to say 78,000, close to $500,000 or so in what we call value management. And that's simply just improvement on installation, material, different types of materials that aren't going to affect the scope. They're just betterments to the project and how it gets executed, the materials that are used. So we're able to do that. But long-winded answer, I think, is just the level of qualification that you have and the experience they have in these specific projects in their database they're having. I think lends a higher degree of certainty there. And they're the ones going to be on the hook when it goes out to bid at the same time. It goes out to bid and then comes in, say, way over. Well, they're the ones, they're not going anywhere. It's not like they're independent estimator. If it comes in under, then people are going to question it too. So they want in every, they want it to be accurate themselves for many reasons, probably more so than anything, their reputation. So.
Who came up with the first estimate of the 10.2 million?
So the first estimate was performed in July of 23. Construction Cost Solutions was a company, a professional estimator working on behalf of CES, the designer. And that estimate was $9.4 million. And then I believe, I'm guessing the building committee, Board of Ed collectively added soft costs because there's the construction costs and then obviously owner's contingency is probably the largest portion of that, testing and other miscellaneous fees that go along with a project.
And who has created the second estimate of $15,269,000?
So a combination of Gilbane Building Company, the CM, is their estimate, and that estimate currently is $13,807,934. You know, we're happy to provide these budgets. Dr. Galloway has those as well, so you can see the full detailed breakdown. But we add where we specialize in, and where it vacuums, we add this what we call the soft costs, the remaining costs in there. There's 10,000 if we put in for AV equipment. If we have to relocate equipment, if we're taking down ceilings and we have to take it down and put it back up, put a small amount in for that. Just because of our experience, it does not include. We have not included the designer's cost that was funded by your CIP fund, so that's not in the budget of the 15.3. Included there is our fees. Our current contract is $318,343. That is included in the budget. Also, the current low proposal for building commissioning, which is required for the grant, that's $70,800 is included. We included legal fees, which of $10,000, which you could take out if you take care of legal fees from your general fund per se. You can take that out. That's an easy scratch out of the budget, but not a major amount. We also have $20,000, roughly $20,712 for builder's risk insurance. That's basically construction insurance if something goes wrong. That covers it. Gilbane has also carried $100,000 in theirs in that construction budget of the $13 million. So we think it's going to be somewhere in between. We've been seeing quotes from Corona come in higher than expected. So in totality, we have $120,000. So if it comes under budget, that number will just drop to your owner's contingency if we're under budget on the construction value. Materials testing, we're going to have steel being put in place. We want them inspecting the steel, the bolted connections, welded connections, concrete, etc. for materials out in the field. We've also included $50,000 for moving services. So I mentioned before, we're going to grab a bank of 5 or 6 classrooms at a time. We're going to have to pack those up in their contents, move them to wherever location we're going to place them. We haven't determined it yet. We're still working on it. We include it because BOE staff could possibly do it. It's typically a heavy lift. There's a lot of contents, a lot of moving, and many districts opt to hire off the DAS contract, which you can do. with a moving firm, and based upon our experience with similar projects, this kind of budget we would carry. But it's to have that firm do all the physical lifting and moving the boxes to the spaces. Sometimes helping teachers actually pack, believe it or not, because there is just so much content in those rooms. 2,000 for advertising, and then we had 3,300 for miscellaneous expenses. Sometimes just miscellaneous item comes up during construction that the district needs assistance with that was unforeseen, pretty minor. The largest chunk of that is the soft costs. We have $966,000 for owner's contingency, and that is essentially 7% of the construction budget. At a minimum, we recommend 5% owner's contingency. That's primarily, in this case, unforeseen conditions that may arise during construction. As part of the pre-construction services, Gilbana's out there, they're popping ceiling tile, get above the ceiling to look at your conditions above. Sometimes we've seen where you have a corridor wall that may not go all the way up to the bottom of the deck. You expose that, and your building official saying, "Hey, we got to bring it all the way to the deck," and it's
Has anyone checked for asbestos?
I'm sorry.
Has anyone checked for asbestos?
Yeah, so we discussed that at length, and Jim McPhee.
Jim McPhee.
McPhee, yeah.
He's attested that building's been basically 99% abated from hazardous materials. So we did check that to confirm, because we typically will run into asbestos fittings on pipes, etc. I say we won't run into a few here and there, but they're confident that most of it's been abated, and that we should have minimal interference from those. But again, if it pops up, we didn't account for any abatement in that aspect based upon that information. And then the owner's contingency also, we added 2%, and this is really up to the town. We presented two budgets to the board, and one was only 5% and one with the 2%. Under basically the understanding of if we're going to ask for additional monies, and if you're going to go back out to your taxpayers, have enough, not too much. There's a fine line between asking for too much and not enough, so we recommend maybe another 2%. So in case the bids did come in slightly higher, you'd have a little bit of cushion there. But this is totally up to you. It's your budget as a town as to what you think is appropriate to carry. So we presented both numbers.
So the 15.2 number includes this 7% contingency fee?
Correct. And if it was 5%, it would be just under 15 million, for 14,997,000 judge.
Are there questions? Yeah.
I thought I heard one of the meetings talk about addressing the other costs like lighting or paint while you were disturbing for the HVAC. Was any of that included in this 15.2?
Yeah, so when we were originally going through our process and we had the first number 15 million, and then they said, well, let's look at first shift as a budget management tool. We always will recommend add alternates to a project. One of them was, I think it's painting the corners. I don't have it right in front of me. Actually, I may have it right. Yeah, actually, I have it in front of me, actually. It was, it's not coming up, but there was some painting that we had taken out that the district might have assumed for that. That was about $52,000. There was some area ceiling sprinkler work. I apologize, it's getting cut off on me. That was $100,000, and then so there was some select work that we said, okay, do we really need to get it done? That's been put back into the project. The building committee wanted to put it basically all back. The only items that they didn't put back in, I believe, were they offered if the school could find a classroom or a small office to house the construction manager instead of having a field office trailer. They estimated about $50,000 there. And then we have a target, and these are kind of pending, they're not included with it. They're including $216,000 in allowances. And allowances are basically accounting for unforeseen items that they typically see in construction. We could totally delete them, but the money would just come out of your owner's contingency for that. So that's a pending item. in that. So, but those items were put back.
Two questions for Sam and one for Brian. Do we have swimming space available in the school to move classrooms temporarily?
That's an ongoing discussion.
Okay.
So the two choices would be to move kids in that particular space, consolidating rooms, which I really don't want to do. You know, in some school construction projects, they use the gym, they put up portables. That's not optimal. MBA has less than 400 students, so I've been looking at that space. Portables are really a budget buster, so that's been taken off the table. But if we clear this hurdle, we will probably identify space maybe across the street.
Okay. And second question, is it possible to go back for more grants with the increased cost?
We did ask, and the answer was no. Well, we could withdraw from our original grant award, and I was told maybe reapply for a third round, but I was at a superintendent's meeting not too long ago. Highly unlikely that there will even be a third round. So it's kind of like take what
you got.
you got. If you would withdraw, you're at risk of not being awarded anything.
It's a hell of a gamble. Do we have a sense, Brian, if we were to try to go back out for more funding, what we would need? The delta?
I did some quick math here. It's about a $4.7 million variance, so we would be, for rounding purposes, between 4.8 and 5 million.
Okay.
We wouldn't even be in this position if it wasn't for the due diligence of the subcommittee and the building committee, because what had happened was we had reached a point where we decided to go construction manager versus a general contractor because we don't possess the wherewithal or the means to supervise and go out for bids and everything. So we went with a construction manager, and we received the bids back on that. And when we did that, simple math said, oh my God, you deduct this from the 10.5 million, and you only have like 8.5 million or so to actually build this thing. Good thing we didn't go general contractor, because we probably would have already gone out for bid, and we would have found out the hard way that when the bids started coming in that we didn't have enough money. So we asked Gilbane, before we hire you as a construction manager, can you refresh this estimate for us? Because we have a feeling that our original estimate is not on target. And that's how we ended up with this. So in a way, we kind of headed off. It could have been an even worse situation. So.
Yep.
Yeah, so, maybe more for Tim, but what's the timeline here? Is this a 2-year project, and where are we with the referendum? It still has to go before the selectmen and then CIP, and we can move that part, but Tim, or do you have a sense of, first of all, is it a 2-year project? Is it going to start next July? Is it
24, 26 months is where I think we're
Yeah, so in the original RFP that we received, and actually what we put in for the construction manager, the assumption was a 24-month construction duration for it. And they're able to reduce that to about 21 months. So the end result is still in the
year-round, or?
Yeah, that's basically year-round. So there's, the activities during the academic year would be much limited. Summers obviously have the year. We're going to take on more spaces and try to get as much as we can, probably like admin spaces. We would go in there, get those done, cafeteria, stuff like that is typically what we'll do during the summertime. So yeah, it's heavy in the summer and a little bit lighter during the school year. So
the start date is dependent upon when it gets through our administrative process.
Yeah, so the timeline for the referendum right now, I reached out to bond counsel about it. The planned referendum date right now would be December 17th. And then backing into everything, so 10-3, Gilbane and Colliers both are coming back to the Board of Selectmen meeting to present. Update them with the same information basically that you got tonight. 1010, the Board of Ed has already approved the project, so 1010, it would come to CIP at that meeting. 1017 is Board of Selectmen again. At that time, we would have the first resolution available. Board of Selectmen at that time could move to approve the resolution. I think it's the 23rd,
22nd.
22nd of October is your regularly scheduled meeting. You'd have the resolution then. And then with your approval at that meeting, then we would begin the town meeting process. And that would be at the beginning of December. Basically, the month of November would be, the legal notices that have to go out, ordering the ballots and so
So
forth.
does that give you, Doctor, enough time to market this? Because you basically, what you're asking the citizens to do is spend their full 10 million. They were only spending 6.5 before, and now
Right.
they're basically spending the whole thing. It's
Yeah,
just,
about 9.4 million of bonding.
does that give you enough time to,
I'll make it be enough time.
yes.
Good answer.
And whatever we can do to help in that endeavor, we'd be happy to.
Yeah, we assumed if the resolution passed in December, we'd be looking to go out to bid in January, and that's about a 30 to 60-day process. So by the time the bids came back and negotiations, you're March, April before you have an actual construction crew, a construction company on site and ready to go. And I think we said April, May for mobilization to
Or the
actually.
April break, ideally it'd be that April break to,
Start.
when kids are away, and if we have to set up fencing, stuff like that.
Have you, excuse me. Thank you. Brian, have you done some thinking about the 9.4 million in bonding and that bonding's effect on the mill rate?
So I actually went and looked, I dug up some information that our financial advisor had sent us about a year or so ago on what a $10 million bond for the school project would be. That was assuming no state grants at the time, so it was, I took those numbers and put them into my chart and so forth, and really by the time we look at bonding this project, I mean, we're starting it in spring of '25. By the time it's completed in, spring, summer of '27, you go out and you get the money. 28, you defer, you're not starting payments until 29. By then, we've already had other debt service fall off, and so I kind of took those numbers and pushed them in from 29 and then 20 years forward. I don't think anybody maybe some of us will be, but some of us won't be in this room in 2049.
Very pessimistic on your.
Yeah.
I know Tim will be here.
But looking at it, even with the roads and everything compounded on it, it's not a major hit to it. The difference was about $150,000-$200,000 annually between what we had projected, and that was at a 4.8% interest rate, which, looking at all the emails that we get from from the financial advisors, debt's selling right now in the low 3s to high 2s even.
So it could be a wash.
So it could be a wash by the time we actually, go out to bond in 3.5 years, and get money and interest rates. Who knows what they'll be then? But I definitely think they'll be a lot lower than 4.8.
I think so.
You probably answered my question, because I was just curious about how this coming onto the table would relate to the bonds that are coming, essentially terminating.
Yep.
And you sort of answered.
Yeah, we have debt that falls off in it's either 27 or 28, and then another one that falls off in like 33, I think 32, somewhere around there.
Well, that's helpful.
Any other questions?
No, this was very helpful.
I have one question or a couple of questions. How much has your firm been paid to date for your efforts?
Paid today, $45,000.
And you have another $318,000 in the budget for additional fees?
No, that's our current total contract. That would include
That's the
that
total,
28,000.
so it's
correct.
whatever the net is from
Yeah.
45.
Yeah,
Okay.
about 290, if I, roughly speaking.
Do you know what Gilbane has been paid to date?
0.
Zero. What's
They have an
their-
invoice, I asked them for one, it deserve to get paid, so.
What's their contract like?
So, the way we structure a construction manager, their pre-construction services, roughly $91,000, so they submitted that in the response to the RFP. Kind of the way we structured this, we kind of went out of order, and we said, we'd like you to, I have to look at the number, I want to say it's around 30 or 35,000 to do the estimate, do some initial phasing, scheduling, and kind of look at it, the construction logistics, and I can pull that number. I want to say it's around 30, 35. The remaining value of those dollars is putting it out to bid, developing bid packages, assisting the town with, doing what we call ripping, doing openings of the bids, scope reviews with the bidders, because it's going to go out publicly to multiple bid trade contracts. So, them as well as ourselves will be sitting in those meetings all day and confirming scopes. CES will be there as well, making sure they have it covered for that. So the pre-con is the 91,000. Then when we go out to bid and they get all the bids, they'll package what we call that GMP. If anybody's heard of that, guaranteed maximum price. Basically, it's going to be the lowest qualified responsible bidder for each bid package. The open bids, everybody's going to see it. And then what we call below the line is their general conditions. I could bring it up and tell you what it is. The general conditions, their bonding, their insurances. There's also in their contract, we call a CM contingency. That's the at-risk part. There's a maximum of 3%. And what that is if they say miss scope and they miss the lights that are on the drawings, they only own what's on the drawing. They're not required to fill in the gaps. If there's an omission on the drawing, that's an omission, that's an owner's contingency, and taken care of from there. But includes CM contingency, whatever they don't use of that comes back to you and nerves back to you. So there's one that's pretty good in their buyout, and there's use of CM contingency. We've always seen a fairly healthy return from that, so I'm hopeful that we'll see some back. It's in that 13.8 you're saying. I'm hoping some of that comes back. I'm pretty confident it will for that. But and their fee, they get a fee. It's roughly 2%, 2.2% as well, basically profit. So,
Mr. Devlin asked you a question at the outset of the meeting, and you gave a rather long and extended answer. Can you shorten that up and tell us what you, as a professional, what's your level of confidence in this $15.2 million number? Is it high?
It's high. We always scratch our head, and wonder because we can't predict it. But my experience with Gilbane on many projects that we performed has always been. We've fortunately been successful because of our process that we go through. Granted, this one hasn't gone through as a rigorous process just because of timing, but I have a high level of confidence with it that they have done their homework from the estimate, because that's 90% of your budget is the 13.8. That's the high, majority of it, and their estimating has always been pretty good. Not to say that it's always coming under, but their estimating is very good. So my confidence level is high. I'm not going to say it's extremely high, but I feel comfortable moving forward with this in a responsible manner, again, without bumping up that owner's contingency where, we don't want the impression that we're trying to bump, pad the project, because really not a lot of extras on this project. We're not going to have a lot of owners, requests I don't expect in this type of a project. So it is high, though.
Okay. Well,
fingers crossed.
We're moving from one number up by more than 50% of that number, and Sam and his folks have got to sell that along with us to the town of Summers. So we don't need to. That's why I'm asking. That's why.
We don't want to do it again, and you don't want
Yeah, strike three
to do it
without,
again.
won't be able to go back to the well.
Yeah, and it's a little scary,
And you're
to be honest.
accustomed to a 60-year-old retrofit building.
I'm sorry.
Have you worked on a retrofit on a 60-year-old building?
Yeah,
Okay.
do it all the time. So most of the projects that are any a renovation project are in it, 50s, 60s, 70s eras. The big thing that we're talking about is hazmat. Is what's the condition of them. We've been told it's all been taken care of. We are gonna run into, unforeseen. It's gonna happen. But we try to put the appropriate amount of contingency in there, without being egregious, with that. And the good thing about it is we're going to get the bids in, and we're going to know where we're at bid day. Are we within budget? We'll know that. And we're not going to let that go forward if they come out with a result that we hadn't anticipated. And the estimate also, they're not estimating the low bidder. They typically are bidding look at the number 2 bids, so because you're going to have some that are fall, typically. So certainly all fair questions. We built quite a few referendum budgets throughout the state, and fortunately been successful. But it's about budget management. It doesn't happen by itself. You have to be proactive. It's going to have to continue through the construction process. Change orders come in, and we talked about it last night. Our drill was pretty good about, scrubbing those change orders, making sure they remain eligible. And so when we submit them, they're not worded in a way that the state's going to go, it's ineligible. And find solutions when issues come up, and working collaboratively with, it's a code issue, working with the bill official, fire marshal. Hey, what can we do to get this done so it achieves code, but cost effective hopefully as well.
My only real concern was the timing of the referendum. I mean, if we could have gotten it on the regular vote, there's 0 chance in my mind it would fail. But when you're trying to get people a week before Christmas to come out, and it's going to be the incorrect people who show up. So, unless people really get the word out.
Yeah, that's going to be a major hurdle to get over, right? I have a question, Brian. The original vote was that the town appropriate the 10.2 million.
10.5.
10.5, and so should the request for a special appropriation come from the town as opposed to the Board of Ed, so that it's consistent?
It all comes through the town. Yep.
Okay, so it's up to the Board of Selectmen to make the request for the special appropriation in the
Correct.
first instance,
Yep.
so that we can then deal with it at CIP and.
Well, the Board of Ed approved the project, and that's what
Correct.
sends it to CIP. So there are 2 different pathways. The project itself has now been approved, so it can be vetted by CIP, and then ultimately sent on to you guys to approve the project at the same time as the resolution. The Board of Selectmen will be presented with basically the variance budget, and asked to approve a resolution to go to the voters for the additional appropriations needed to increase the resolution.
Okay.
I think I know the answer to this based upon our discussion at the last meeting with the roads. There is 0 chance of getting this on for the regular.
Oh, yeah, no, there's no chance. That ship sailed about 4 weeks ago.
All right. Yeah.
Does it make sense to try to shoot for after the Christmas holiday?
I don't know.
What do you think?
And I was going to say, the only thing we ran into then was the later we wait, the longer the bid process takes, and then the mobilization to.
And we lose the summer. We lose the summer potentially, so I do think we should probably leave it.
Yeah, that was the only thing we ran into. And then we originally, the date we were looking at for the referendum was going to be December 10th, but then that pushed the town meeting to the week of Thanksgiving, and we figured nobody's going to be here for the town meeting for that.
Okay,
so
just leave it.
with all the holidays, it made it, the scheduling was difficult. I sat on the phone with bond counsel for probably close to an hour trying to hammer out dates that we could make things line up.
Okay. Good enough. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Board of Selectmen, Tim?
It's not working.
The light just doesn't work. Probably again, it's the light doesn't work. Yeah, it's on. I don't know what happened to the light.
Good evening, members of the board. I asked Chief Leonard, our new fire chief, to join me. We've spoken several times about the whole ALS EMS program being delivered to Stafford. That's a great interest of the board. That'll be an opportunity. The chief has presented to the Board of Selectmen basically his plan going forward and what he and I have discussed together and agreed upon. And I thought it would be this is an opportunity for him to make the same presentation to you fellows, updated with latest information. So, Chief.
First of all, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you for having me. I know, first-time caller, long-time listener. I've watched a couple of these online. So, again, I'm Chief David Leonard, the current chief of the Summers Fire Department. I put together a little bit of a presentation just to give you an update of some numbers, where we're at, when I'm speaking, what I'm referencing, so everybody's on the same page, kind of clean slate. Let's start over. So just for everybody's knowledge, to bring everybody up to where we are, the Stafford status. As you're all aware, the current written mutual aid agreement expired on the 1st of August. You gentlemen, long before I sat in the seat, have been working on a new contract with better terms to no avail. One of the updates we've had in the more recent time is we've been much more in contact with State Office of Emergency Medical Service with guidance. Unfortunately, they are only a regulatory agency, so they could give us some guidance, but they're very leery of putting it in writing. Their guidance has basically been that now that we have no written mutual aid agreement, we can't be held accountable to respond. Stafford did, on August 1st, change their order of mutual aid response, and they moved us lower on the list. The problem was a situation quickly arose where, towns away were being called and having to drive by us to get to scenes. And Sponsor Hospital through Johnson Memorial kind of said, that's something you're now purposely delaying patient care. And it was switched back by Stafford to have us come back second as their second response. The biggest change in the lack of the mutual aid contract is now that the patient receives the full bill. So prior to this, we had the bundle billing agreement with Stafford. So basically, when Stafford sent out their bill, we received a small appropriation from the bill. We are now billing the patient's insurance company directly for our full bill, which for an ALS transport is about $1,300 compared to the $150 that we were getting with the bundle billing agreement. Another update that we did in talking to the selectmen was we wanted to start, if you will, building a little bit more of a paper trail. So this week, Brian and myself took the contract that we had offered, the new mutual aid contract, and we said it's certified to Stafford, to both the first selectman and Alex Moore, the chief of Stafford EMS, with could we please have a written response to this? Are you going to sign this or not? Yes or no? So we gave them 10 business days. We sent it certified yesterday. So now we'll wait to see if we get a response from Stafford.
Basically, what's being offered is the same deal we offered last summer. So there's no difference. It's a bundle delay and $150 current and $250 for the black card.
Yeah, so right. The agreement that we had offered before was $250 flat fee for any intercept, and then for Medicaid calls we would go back to the bundle billing agreement. For any other calls we would continue to bill insurance as we had, but we would have a $250 flat fee for any intercept call to Stafford.
On top of the private billing.
On top of, yes.
Yeah, but that's also true if we transport. You understand the difference between the intercept and the transport. So the transport is if we physically put them in the back of our ambulance, where the intercept is the paramedic alone in the car.
Gotcha.
So we have different billing rates for those.
So it was just indicated that the cost of the EMT service to Stafford per unit was $1,300.
Correct, that's what we bill. We're allowed to bill by the
That's what
state.
we're allowed to bill by the state.
Correct.
And so, how much do we, in this agreement, expect to receive for the same service?
In the agreement, it would be 250.
As
Plus
opposed
the,
to
plus the,
$1,300?
plus the insurance,
Plus the insurance,
And what's the insurance number?
up to
up to $1,300.
And characteristically or historically, what is that number? The insurance company doesn't pay the exact difference between the 250 and the 1,300, do they?
No, it
In other
depends on
words-
it depends on the insurance carrier. Unfortunately, it's medical billing, so it depends on the
I
insurance
understand the
company.
craziness
Yes.
involved there, yeah. But you must have some sense of what that number is.
I don't, do you? I will get it from I will get it from our billing agency.
Do you have a sense?
I do not have a sense, no, because,
It's relatively new though, right?
what's that?
This billing process is relatively new. I don't know how much track record we have to see what we're actually getting. And
With our,
net
with
30,
the
net
current
60.
one, no, with
We're not
billing the
talking about
patients,
current number.
yeah, with the
We're
billing
talking
patients
about what-
directly, no.
What's the historical insurance?
Yeah,
payment?
everyone's at Cigna, Aetna.
I will get the information for you. Okay, I will get that for you. So, continuing, if you don't mind, are you?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Just go ahead.
Yep. So call volume wise, everyone asks where we're at. I pulled the data over the last month, looking at our responses into Stafford. So Brian, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, I put a lot of clicks in there on you. Year to date is 1,621 runs for the Summers Fire Department. I have the asterisk up there because I want to explain to you when I give you the number of total calls, where that number is coming from, because there are discrepancies in numbers. And you know, like any good number, you can manipulate it to say whatever you want it to say. But that's the number that I have to submit to the National Fire Academy, to the federal government, to FEMA, for the number of reports that we write. If you check with the dispatch center, they're going to be off. So if you ask our dispatch center how many calls we've been on versus how many calls we've submitted reports on, there's going to be a little bit of a discrepancy. And it's little clerical things like if they click the wrong unit, so there's a call in another town and they accidentally click a Summers unit, it'll create a call in the dispatch computer, but not a call that we would write a report on. So at the end of the year, those numbers are a little bit different. They could be off by 20, 30 calls. But when I tell you this is the number of calls we're doing, this is what we have physically submitted to FEMA as the call volume that the fire department has. So currently, year to date, we've done 1,621 calls. That's combined fire and EMS. Up the amount to Stafford year to date is 257. That's both transports and intercept calls. It's difficult for us to separate those. We'd have to go into the billing, have the billing company run a report to tell it which ones are we transported or which ones we billed. It comes out to an average of roughly 30 calls a month going up the street, or once a day going into Stafford. So, yes.
So, would it be simpler if you fully segregated EMS from fire? In other words, if you just hired EMS personnel and just fire personnel? And the accounting system was very difficult for the team, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because on any given call, an EMS guy could be a firefighter.
Correct.
And a firefighter could be an EMS, because the previous administration hired dual role staff.
Yeah,
So if you segregate, does things get cleaner from an accounting perspective?
From a budgetary perspective, I would say yes. From a practicality perspective, I would say no. Because we have a very limited number of staff, and I can't predict when we're going to have a fire versus an accident versus a medical call. So I would obviously opt for dual role personnel. It's the best bang for our buck. And that's the overwhelming model that most fire departments are going to nowadays.
So the 257 number is a year-to-date number?
Correct, year-to-date.
Because we've heard we've been dealing with this for about 4 years now. So we've heard numbers as high as 360, 380 in terms of the calls to Stafford. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, and we're
We're on pace. I mean,
30
yeah,
calls a month.
it's 29.75 calls a month.
From July 1st.
From January 1st.
January 1,
Yeah.
year to date, yeah.
So, and we've noticed a slight downward trend, but I don't have enough data to tell you if that's realistic or it's just we had a slow month. It comes out to roughly 16% of our call volume is going to Stafford. couple other questions that I've had coming up with, it's how that we're staffing extra people for this. And, you know, we are not. So just to give you some ideas of the numbers, in the month of July, we only had 129 hours or 11 days where there was more than one paramedic on at a time, at a given time. In August, that number bottomed down to 24, which was 2 days. And the biggest reason for that is we have 6 full-time paramedic positions. We're down 2. You could technically say we're down 3 because Chief Roach was also a paramedic, so he would respond when he was in the firehouse on duty. And we're down the 2 full-timers, so our medical availability is low. Again, in the month of September, we only have 24 hours and 2 days scheduled with multiple paramedics on duty.
So it means you're spending more overtime?
No, we're not spending more overtime. Listening to your previous meetings, you're talking about having us up staffing to go to Stafford. You know, we're not staffing extra paramedics to cover Stafford. We're staffing what we have and what we staff with out of our contract.
Well, I don't know if that was the case till you lost 3 people.
Right. Right. I can tell you, since I've been here, this is what we've been doing.
Well, I'll let you finish.
So. I need a clicker. So what am I asking everybody for right now? I'm basically asking for some time. As you know, with the lack of the mutual aid agreement, we are now sending the full bill to the patients. I'd like a little bit of time to start collecting back data. You know, we could be.
Well, you're going to have time no matter what, because Tim, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you sent a letter to Stafford not terminating our service to Stafford, but saying, tell us yes or no whether you want to accept the contract. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. So I was under the impression that you had actually acted to terminate
No,
the service to Stafford. So you have not yet?
no.
Okay. So
Ran out, right? Ran out.
The mutual
Yeah,
agreement.
the formal written mutual aid agreement expired on August 1st. So right now we're operating, you know, without a formal.
We're operating on availability.
Right.
But you tried diligently to renegotiate that contract.
We certainly did.
Yeah.
You ran into a
Months.
brick wall consistently.
Absolutely.
And why do you, given your efforts to try to negotiate that contract, which I think were significant, you worked hard at it, they told you to stick it in your literal ear, no, they're not going to accept it. Why did you feel it was necessary to go back with the contract saying, here's another, you got another 14 days, if I understand it, to say yes or no?
This is probably a legal formality. Presenting it to them in writing, and send a certified mail, saying, respond to us within 10 days. Each of you, the chief of the fire, chief of the ambulance service, and the first selectman. And so at least we'll have that in our back pocket.
But that was on the advice of counsel.
Was that on the advice of counsel?
I think we just decided to
What's that, to send the
send a
certified
certified
The
letter.
attorney that's been
No.
advising you on this.
That was not on the advice of counsel?
No, the council doesn't advise things like that.
I'm not sure of that, but,
Well, I,
I'm sorry, go
No
ahead.
problem. So again, I'm asking for, time, like a quarter. Give me a set period of time where I can
Well,
look at it.
you're gonna have that, chief.
Yes, I'm aware I'm going to have it.
Given the pace that we're going at, you're gonna have that, I guess. I think the thing, and this is just my comment, I'm not speaking as the Board of Finance, but as a member of the Board of Finance, that unless we can demonstrate that there is no revenue outflow as a result of this service to Stafford, we're going to be in a position of continuing to use summer taxpayer money to service another town. That's not right, okay? The summer's taxpayers pay to service this town. And I'm not talking about real mutual aid. If there's an emergency or a disaster, we've got to go help anybody that's in trouble, all right? this is not mutual aid. This is providing a service to another town. And in your additional time, you've really got to demonstrate that Summers dollars, Summers taxpayer dollars, are not going to support another town. Okay? It's not a moral question. It's not a question about your professionalism. I'm sure that and it's been proven that your fire department does a very good job. That's not the issue. The issue is one merely of finances and whether or not the citizens of Summers have an obligation to pay to provide fire EMT service to the town of Stafford. And I don't think, I jumped to my conclusion. Again, I'm speaking only for myself. I don't think we have that obligation. And I think it is also a violation of our charter to spend money outside of the town without having specific taxpayer approval for that budgetary expense. And probably, and I don't want to give the game away, but probably the only way that this Board of Finance, we've been trying to suggest that we terminate this service now for several months, beginning in May, June. There wasn't a meeting in July, but we also in August advised that we should send Stafford a letter terminating, indicating our intent to terminate the service within some reasonable period of time, so we didn't just leave them in the lurch. But none of those advices were taken.
Do you understand the consequence of that?
Yes.
You understand it? You're sentencing someone to die.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
No, Stafford is sentencing its people to suffer without the service.
But you say that if there's a disaster, all right, if we terminate, I'm saying is if we terminate the contract and you're saying there's a disaster in Stafford, it's okay for us to go.
Sure.
But if a 9-year-old kid gets stung by a bee 100 feet over the town line, that kid will die without proper medical care.
But why doesn't Stafford?
I can't answer that. I'm not the fire chief of
Then
Stafford.
I can't answer the question about
I can tell you this. My job is to protect lives and property to the residents of the town of Summers and to an extent to people in general. I will not have a available unit sitting 3 miles away from an emergency when someone's life is at stake because we're mad at the neighboring town.
No, this isn't about being mad, Chief. Well, let me finish. This isn't about being mad. This isn't about being upset or emotional. This is about the citizens of Summers paying for a service that the town of Stafford was obligated to provide. Not the town of Summers, the town of Stafford.
And I wholeheartly agree with you on that.
So
we all agree.
So how do we get
We don't know. This is a very unique problem.
Right.
It can't be. It actually is. I've been around the state a long time. I have a lot of experience with EMS agencies, and no one that I know of has run into this situation.
And I understand that, and I know it's difficult, but it's not a moral issue for us.
It is a moral issue
No,
when
it
you
isn't.
when you tell me to withhold medical care from a sick or injured person. It absolutely is a moral issue.
Okay, but then, is it moral for us to force the citizens of Summers to pay for that?
Again, at the expense of people dying?
I think the biggest thing that's going to
That's
come
not
out
an
of this
effective
too is.
argument. Every town in this state has the obligation to provide the service to its citizens.
Okay.
And if Stafford elects not to do it, it doesn't fall on our shoulders to do it. We are not the end game here for towns who elect not to provide service.
I think as we
Okay? And
begin
if I may,
Yep.
one of the things, perhaps the only thing, and I'm not speaking for the other members of this board, but one of the things that we will be in a position to have to consider is whether we limit your budget to only providing service to this town.
And how would that work? Because
Let me respond to that. First of all, you do not appropriate dollars to support this program.
It's an off-budget item. It's called the Ambulance Emergency Fund. You do not appropriate services to support that. It's a self-serving program. We have $1.5 million in the budget for that program right now. And that's what we operate off of, and we expect to have sufficient dollars to get us through for the near future. So you gotta straighten out.
You're going to have to demonstrate the accuracy of that statement.
I will. We got Brian right here to tell you. Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry to say. This is, we have a
While you're looking,
ambulance emergency fund.
I heard you
It's
say
off
that.
budget. It
I
has
heard you
nothing
the
to
first
do
time.
with your appropriations.
I heard you the
Okay.
first time, and I agree with you. We're here to try to deal with a very difficult problem.
But you're threatening to cut off funds. You just told me
We're
that.
here to.
And I'm telling you, you can cut off funds if you want, but it's not going to affect this program.
Okay. We're here to deal with a difficult problem. We've been struggling with this for 4 years, okay? And it doesn't pay to yell at each other.
No, it doesn't, but I'd like to, you say that you would financially cut us. What does that mean? What would you cut?
What you would do is submit a budget to the Board of Finance in the ordinary course of business to provide services to the town of Summers.
We do that.
Yep, that's what we've done for 2 years now.
Well, we haven't really. That budget has been inflated to provide other services to the town of Stafford. And if you,
It's not true.
well,
I just have one thing I want to say. I can sympathize and empathize with both of what you're both saying. I think right now, we just got out of a mutual aid agreement that was very detrimental to our town. And I think I do struggle with the notion of a nuclear option that will result in loss of life. That's really bothered me. But I think I'm hearing with the reduction in staff that we have right now, we are not overstaffed for Summers. So if we have availability in town of a paramedic to go help somebody and we get compensated in a more fairly manner by billing directly to the patients, then if it's not costing us and possibly helping the bottom line is presuming we're not overstaffing for Stafford, I don't see this as necessarily hurting Summers at all. I think what will be interesting is to see, once we've had a track record of what we're actually collecting from the private pay patients from their insurance policies, but I think as long as what I'm hearing is that we're not overstaffed. If we have people sitting there, they're not tending to emergencies in our town. If we're getting some level of compensation that exceeds what we are getting under the mutual agreement from before, I don't view that as a bad thing. Do I like being the primary provider for Stafford? Not in the least. But if we're not pulling away people from emergencies and Summers, I don't have a huge problem with
well,
it.
that's a key question. So the ALS person runs to Stafford.
Right,
I'm having a heart attack.
correct. That's the,
Do I get a BLS guy?
you get a BLS guy. And then we backfill with another medic.
Well, the question is, what's the experience of that? How many times has that happened in the last year?
I'll have to pull the numbers.
Well, you're going to have, whether I like it or you like it or not, you're going to have an opportunity to do exactly what Bruce just talked about.
You're right.
You're going to have an opportunity to see what the dollars are, okay? And I think you have that. You need to be straight with us and let us know what you find out. The insurance mess is, I understand, is difficult to predict, but you're going to have some data from it. And so we'll be able to see. But I really resist the notion of entering into another contract with Stafford that is going to be a loss leader for us, if you will, if I can use that term. I don't want to enter a contract with them that's going to not produce the opportunity for us to get paid for the work that you're doing.
And none of us do. I mean, that's the thing. But again, we're in a very unique situation here. And it's, like I said, I have pulled a lot of colleagues from around the state. And this is very unique, and we're trying to figure it out. We've gone to the state, we've asked them for help. They don't even have a playbook for this situation because it's so unique. And I understand that everyone at this table has been struggling this with a lot longer than I have. But I think if we have time, we can collect the data, we can see where we are financially with this, and then we can make an educated decision.
So your position is we're obligated to respond regardless of whether we have an agreement in place or not? That's the select.
If we have, as the fire chief in this town, I'm not withholding aid from someone who needs it.
Depending upon availability.
Correct.
Right.
As we've been
Right,
told
absolutely.
by council as well. If we've got people available, they should go. Whether you like it or not. And by the way, I don't think this board has the authority to be telling the fire department to reduce, cut off services, ALS services to Stafford.
Well, I think we do.
I don't think you do.
Well, you want to test that out?
Let's try it.
I don't think that arguing with each other
No, I think
is
that
a
Bruce has made
solution.
some excellent points, and I fully agree with what you've said. This makes a lot of sense. I'm totally supportive. But to threaten cutting off funds unless we eliminate services to Stafford is inappropriate. And I do not support that. I know you don't have the authority to do that either.
Well, that's not what I said. What I said was that you would have time to develop the information that you suggest that you need,
Absolutely right.
right?
Yep.
And if that information suggests that the town of Summers is not losing money, then I certainly don't have any real objection to providing the service to Stafford. If the information shows that the town of Stafford is losing money and that the citizens of Summers are paying for that delta, then some other action needs to be taken. One of those actions is to restrict the budget of the fire department to service only Summers. There may be other ways to deal with it, but it's not fair, and I don't think any of us have the authority, without a vote of the citizens, for their money to be spent in Stafford.
Can I just ask, what do you mean by you would restrict the funding of the fire department? What does that mean?
Well, there is some question about whether or not the budget for the fire department is increased because of the cost of providing service to staff.
I do not believe it is.
Okay. We'll find that out, won't we? As part of the process.
Okay.
Let's just get the data.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we're funding this through the ambulance emergency fund, which is an off-budget item, which you do not have authority over.
I don't think that's true, Tim.
I do.
I don't think that's true.
I do.
Let's just move on from that. It's not getting us anywhere.
I was going to say, I really agree with what Bruce said. I think since we're billing the patients and started in July or whatever, I'd like to see how that goes for a few months. And I'm happy that
It's all part of the bigger thing, and this bigger thing is the ambulance fund. And revenues come in and expenses go up. And all those medics are in that fund. They are not being charged to the general fund. They were not voted on in the referendum. It is a separate fund. It self-funds itself. All the insurance money will come into the ambulance fund. All the money that we have from our lousy agreements comes into the ambulance fund, and the expenses go out. As long as that fund is showing a profit, the taxpayers never spend a penny.
What about for the
That
equipment?
fund has $1.5 million in it now, and probably has enough to fund the entire budget this year and still show a profit at the end of the year, which means there will be no transfer from the general fund into that fund, which means there'll be no money charged to taxpayers. All the money that they made by going on runs and getting money from the insurance company is funding that fund. So I agree with you. If you want to isolate it and look at a piece of it called Stafford and say, hey, we're losing money, that makes sense. But that fund is total, is not losing money. And so therefore, it's not costing the town anything.
Well, it's interesting how those statements are really different from what you've said in the past.
It's different from what I've said.
The finance department. Because it seems to be,
I don't know if that's the truth.
I think the one principal difference is the mutual aid contract did not get us much money. I think the contract that Tim proposed this time has I forget what you call it, it's not an arrival cost, but a show-up cost plus the insurance. That would be even better. But I think we're going to see different numbers with
well,
this
the
mutual
direct
aid
billing
thing.
is a huge change, long overdue, and we'll see what happens.
Right, to give you some kind of idea, okay, because I'm in the middle of, in which we've all got to sit down, I'm in the middle of filling out this long form with the state of Connecticut. In 2024, okay, where the biggest hit comes from is Medicare and Medicaid. In 2024, we had 1,094 calls that were Medicare or Medicaid eligible. Okay. We billed out a total of $1.75 million worth of billings last year alone. Okay. Of that, $1,034,000 is an allowable discount under Medicare and Medicaid. Okay. We collected net revenue of $712,000. Okay. The biggest issue is Medicare and Medicaid. And now that we do not have these bundle billing agreements in place, we're billing the patient for an intercept, $1,078. For a transport, $1,300. We're not billing, we're not getting $150 from Alex Moore for doing it anymore. What this may or may not create is either flush revenue, because the patient is now got a bill that is going to end up on their credit report if they don't pay it, or it's going to end up with patients in the first selectman's office screaming and yelling and saying, why don't you have some kind of agreement in place? Why am I paying this $1,078 bill? You're supposed to provide this service for us.
But if it's a Medicare or Medicare transport, that's their primary insurance. That's all we get.
That's all we get from insurance. The remainder is on them, because there's no agreement in place.
I think we're going to see some pretty good increases in revenue.
Or pressure the staff, which is another side.
But I think that's going to take time for it to work.
Correct.
So I don't want to rush into anything, because I do think I see some light at the end of the tunnel with this new model, personally.
I think you need 3 months to look at it.
I think so
Well, you
too.
certainly have that much time. I mean, no one is restricting the amount of time that you have to figure it out, but.
Chief Lynette, can I ask a question?
Yes.
When you show up, is that what you're calling an intercept?
Intercept is the paramedic coming in the SUV by themselves.
So they get paid even if they don't transport?
Right. No,
Only if we get on the ambulance and go to the hospital.
yes.
But if you show up at the house and it turns out they're not having a heart attack or anxiety?
We receive nothing, correct?
Okay.
Some services do bill.
I didn't hear that.
We should have brought Matt Atwood behind us. He is the
So
lead
if
paramedic.
Go ahead.
If we go to the call,
Yeah.
we treat the patient. You can treat on scene. So if I go to the call and I treat the person on scene, I do a 12 lead, I do my assessment stuff.
Touch
We
the
can,
body, you get money.
yes, sir. Perfect. Right there. I touch the body, we get money.
Okay.
I get on the other town's ambulance and transport to the hospital with them, we get more money.
Okay. But if you go there and you say, that's really nothing, and you don't touch them, then.
And does not need me.
But I'm assuming that's not.
No, some places do. You can do that. Some places do.
Some companies do.
Yeah,
bill for
we-
cancer.
So you could bill for driving over the mountain and turning around and driving back, right?
Okay, but it would also require us to bill all of our residents for that same thing.
Yeah.
In order to do that,
Yeah.
you would need to set up an agreement, such as we had before with Stafford. Wyndham medics charge a flat rate to go to a call. If they make it to the scene, regardless of whether they touch the patient, they get a flat fee. We don't have an agreement in place. We need to have an agreement, because sooner or later, this Medicare, Medicaid, billing the patient, the full bundle, is going to stop. It's going to backfire, and it's going to cause blowback on us. It's going to cause blowback on Stafford. Our hope is that Mr. Morrison is going to feel the pressure from his citizens, as he should, because they're getting bills that they're not used to anymore. And he will come back to the table, and between the two town governments, we can come up with an agreement that is mutually beneficial to all. It requires cool heads, facts, a negation of ignorance through no fault of anybody else's. Just, it's a very convoluted system, and people need to be educated on exactly how it works and have a full understanding so that when we do meet, the communication can be effective versus not. That's my piece. I kind of say that.
I said it at the beginning.
I wanted to.
I think some of that
I
education.
appreciate everybody's candor, and I appreciate everybody's willing to try to talk this through, okay? And without animosity, everybody's trying to come up with an answer and work on an answer that's going to be in the best interest of the people of Summers. And disposing of the misinformation is an important part of it.
So in that regard, I'd like to pass out again a copy of the email sent to us on the 10th of September.
And just discuss this, if I could, please. Copies of it. Okay, first of all, I'd just like to say I received this email, of course, right around the 10th of September. It's from the Board of Finance to Brian Wissinger, Town Treasurer, myself, First Selectman, and Superintendent Galloway. Subject of the letter is areas of concern spelled out. One is the misappropriation of ALS EMS services to Stafford. Two is the communication and lost time for making decisions required and last-minute decisions required of the Board of Finance. Which is the second point. The third one had to do with HVAC, which of course you've already dealt with. First of all, I'd like to request that this copy of this email, because it's a official document, it shall be included in the minutes of today's meeting.
No problem.
Right? And again, I appreciate, of course, the interest and involvement of this board in this issue of ALS services being provided to Stafford. Been great. But also, I think that items that are raised in this communication, I have several concerns about them. I'd just like to go through and tell you what they are. First is that I believe that the letter is basically evidence of an illegal meeting of the Board of Finance in accordance with FOIA. You can look into that. Plus, you have a unanimous vote, so to speak, with regards to, he said, all members support this. Second item is the fact that the word misappropriation is used 3 different times, and I believe, because we have the ambulance emergency fund, is that it's an off-budget item and it's not an appropriation. So calling it a misappropriation is inaccurate.
Well, Tim, this is the first time you've expressed that position on this.
Okay?
So we've been briefed ad nausea on this issue, and this is the first time you've gone forward and made that statement.
But I'm not sure you've used the word misappropriation before.
I think we have, maybe,
Yeah?
but I think that's, yeah.
Okay, I'm just giving you my point of view.
Sure, absolutely.
Up-to-date point of view. Also, it mentions close to $1 million of tax revenue. Summers tax revenue is being spent here. I think that's a gross exaggeration. It's not close to $1 million, and Brian can talk about that if you'd like to hear more information. The letter talks about legal basis and ethical requirements to ensure that Summers taxpayers' funds remain in Summers. First of all, Erica Nolan, who is the attorney that we've been dealing with, basically has told us that it's up to Summers to make the decision on whether or not they have the availability to respond. That's pretty much what the requirements are. So I'm not sure if that's a legal requirement that we can't respond. I don't understand your reference to, we don't have the legal basis to respond. And then the ethical issue, I think it's an ethical issue as to whether or not we respond to a medical emergency. That's the ethics. It has nothing to do with whether we're spending taxpayers' money, so to speak. And then, again, again, your message, unmistakable message is that Summer should cease ALS response to Stafford. I mean, that's what keeps coming through. It's like you guys aren't making the right decisions. I think that's overreaching. I think that's programmatic. You're telling us how to manage our services, and I think it's inappropriate. And you're talking, and then at the end you talk about the Board of Finance is prepared to take drastic action. Let's hear about what your options are in that regard. I'd like to hear that, rather than just threaten us with drastic action. Like, what are you talking about?
We've already had this discussion tonight at some length about our concerns, about the use of funds to service Stafford. We've agreed with the chief that you're going to have time to see if his data collection is going to be helpful. So we have stepped back from any kind of precipitous action and said, okay, take the time in the next quarter to come up with the data, and let's see what the story is. I don't see any reason to raise the issue above that level any further at the moment.
We still received this email, and it still had all these objectionable things included in
You
it.
find them objectionable,
Well-
and I don't. And I know some of the members of this board don't find them objectionable.
And I think you had
But
a-
we have tried to modify our position and modify our approach in accordance with the chief's request to assemble the data, and let's see. I think legal distinctions between ambulance fund and general fund don't really answer any questions. What answers the question is, what's it costing us to go to Stafford? Whether the money comes out of the ambulance fund, whether it comes out of general revenues or anywhere else, it still belongs to the citizens of Summer. Let's get the data. Let's argue about it after we have the data. Does that make sense? That's what you asked for.
That's what we're talking about. That's our plan. That's what we want to do.
Now,
But that runs contrary to what was stated in this email.
The first time you've stated the plan, after months.
No, wait. With the meeting we had back in early August, I told you that we have a new billing system. We're billing people directly. It's going to take us a while to find out what the collection rate is like, and that's what we're asking for. I brought that up.
If it makes you feel better, you win the day.
Well, I'm just telling you the facts. You can deal with it the way you want to.
Well, apparently, the way we're dealing with it, you don't, are inappropriate. So can we just move on?
Well, I think I dealt with my points that relate to your email. I think you had an illegal meeting. I think you should be rescinding the email, but that's just my point of view.
okay. Got anything else you want to say?
That's it. I'm done.
Chief, you done too?
See you soon.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Keep us in the loop.
Yes, I will.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said if you put this memo in, there you go. Hey, thanks a lot for making this meeting, sure, it becomes part of the legal meeting, but you know,
Okay. CFO Finance, do you guys really want to talk now after all of this, or?
You got the budget, same financial,
model that the Board of Ed presented you as well. I added the detail to it, so you can see all of the line items if you so choose to go line by line. Still currently no budget adjustments, potentially some at the next meeting. You'll see, assuming that transfers are approved in about hopefully 10 minutes. Hopefully 5.
Okay. Anything else?
Any questions on the budget or where it stands?
Mike,
No?
do you want me to make a motion to approve the separation payments? Do you just get it on the table for discussion?
Sure. Yeah, that'll be the next thing.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the transfer requests made by the CFO.
Yeah, so this is an appropriation request for $43,141.02. This is to cover the costs of separating employees. William Heiko was a long-term employee. I don't really know exactly how long, but years. And Christina Hurdle resigned from her position at the beginning of August. So the remaining PTO after adjustment for their last date. And this is the total requested payout. From this, it'll go back to the Board of Selectmen to set a town meeting date to be formalized at that point.
So this is out of budget?
This is out of budget, yes. We had appropriated $15,000 for the current year to transfer in. That plus what was approved in late June was basically swept up by Chief Roach when he left. That paid his payout. And so then now we're back to square. Every time I transfer money into that fund, I can never get ahead of it.
You remember we set this fund up, so
Yeah.
we wouldn't have to
Several
go
years
through
ago.
this.
So we wouldn't have to go to a town meeting.
At the
Yes.
proper amount, it would then take care of itself. Hasn't worked that way.
Unfortunately, we needed $100,000 in the budget annually for 3 or 4 years to give it a reserve balance.
The
and
one time you
we
can
don't have
possibly
space for
do
that.
this, if you have money left over in employee salary, you can, that money can automatically go into this fund at year end. I don't know if we have any left over.
Not that it didn't pay for other expenses.
No.
The way you were going to be appropriated.
We have a second.
I was just going to say, we don't have a second.
We have a second. Okay. Bill, that's right. Is there any further discussion about this?
No.
Bill? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay.
Next one is a transfer request for the approved salaries for fiscal year 2025, or for the approved salary increases, I should say. These monies are sitting in a different line item and need to be transferred into the various salary lines to cover those increases. The list is attached.
Make a motion to approve salary adjustments of $120,465.
Second.
Any further discussion? Any questions of Brian? All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries.
And then the final transfer is for the fiscal year 2024 end of year budget adjustments to zero out line items. The majority of these are covered within their own departments. A couple of departments did go over, but we just transferred from other departments to cover those. Fire was one of them, their budget was over for the fiscal year. And I believe one of the public works line items was over for the fiscal year as well.
I make a motion to approve $390,951.18 to finalize FY '24 fiscal year.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries.
resolution regarding the $2 million bond?
No, it's just part of the minutes. I didn't know if you had any other business. The resolution is just part of the minutes.
We're all done with it, as far as we're concerned, right, at this point?
Correct.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of August 6th.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Joe, your turn.
Mr. Chairman, before you adjourn.
Yep.
So I heard mention about having the letter get attached to this meeting as in the minutes. And we want that to happen so that it's a recorded meeting that we produce these, to produce the letter? Is that where?
It's going to be, we've admitted this letter as part of this meeting, so it is part of this meeting, and it's been entered on the record in this meeting at the request of the First Selectman. And it is part of the record of this meeting, so it'll be attached to the minutes of this meeting.
I'm not entirely comfortable with that practice going forward. Being new, I understood that I couldn't reply all, because it would be a FOIA violation to reply all. So I just feel like when we have these kinds of things come up, I want to make sure we have a chance to address them in a better forum going forward, is the point that I would make.
Fine. Good point. Anything else? Any further discussion? Now, Joe.
Move to adjourn.
All right. All in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.